Okay, so I'd like to start by introducing our panel, and I'm going to start here with Stacie Takeguchi. She's the Chief Assistant General Manager at Pasadena Water and Power. She has more than 24 years of experience in the water industry. She oversees various operational, strategic, and managerial initiatives of the overall utility and is responsible for all aspects of Pasadena's water system. Prior to joining PWP, she worked for the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California for 15 years, serving in various capacities, including leading regional drought action and planning efforts. Additionally, she has experience in managing innovative stormwater multi-use projects at the County of Los Angeles Department of Public Works. She has a bachelor's degree from Tulane University and is a licensed engineer in the state of California. So Stacie, please take a few minutes to talk a little bit about your background.
All right, great. And I'd like to take this time to actually introduce a little bit about what we do at Pasadena Water and Power. But before that, I want to say good evening and thank you for being here today. This is great. And I'd like to introduce some key players. I know I'm up here speaking, but throughout this event, we have some true heroes, some in the audience right now. So if you could stand up, some of the team at Pasadena Water and Power, Jack Miyamoto, if he's the head of water quality, thank you very much. And Yen Chu, also one of our principal engineers, working 24/7 on that too. We also have our neighboring agencies. I know we have Foothill, Crescenta Valley, and I'm not sure if we have more agencies there too, but if you could stand up and say hi. We're all in this together. And we're working very, very closely together on it, and it's a true pleasure working with this team. Quite fantastic. Yen is also a graduate at Caltech, so almost as cool as Tulane. So going to my slide really quickly. So again, my name is Stacie Takeguchi. I have the honor of serving as the Chief Assistant General Manager and Head of Water at Pasadena Water and Power. And what we do is deliver safe and reliable water and power. So right here, our vision, our mission, that's our North Star, particularly during crisis. So that's what kept us going and guiding our decisions throughout the entire process. We are a community-owned, not-for-profit utility, meaning that we're all stewards, all of us here are stewards of our water system and our water future. I think that's quite important. Anything we get as far as revenues, we get to invest right back into the system, which is key in resilience through this event as well. Now, we also serve an area a little bit larger than the city boundaries, including in Altadena. We're one of the partners there in Altadena. Most people don't know this, actually, that we are the largest water provider in Altadena as well. So when I say we're part of this as a team, we really are part of this as a team. Next slide here. So how we deliver on this mission is through reliable water supplies, being one of the key components. We have a diversified water portfolio. I know there's a lot of misinformation out there that we didn't have enough supplies from all of our sources. That wasn't true. One of the challenges we'll talk about later was about misinformation. But we have a diverse water supply portfolio. About a third of our water supply is from our groundwater basin, which is right beneath your very feet right now. I could say, imagine a cup of sand full of water. Even if the water level is below the sand level, that's still there. And that's what we do with our groundwater. So about a third of our water is from right here locally, and about 2/3 imported with our partnership with the Metropolitan Water District. Pasadena is one of the founding cities in the creation of this regional water district that serves all of Southern California, 19 million people. Get water from the Colorado River and Northern California as well. So a diverse portfolio mix there is really key. Next slide, sorry, thank you. And so we have supply, we have to be able to deliver it. And so we have a very robust and resilient system to deliver that water through pipes, wells, treatment plants, you name it, we got it. Right, over 500 miles there too of pipelines. Next slide. And of course, you can have water, you can have it delivered, but the key to this topic is water quality. Water quality is of the utmost importance. And people, my team, you hear that stressing. I stress that all the time. People in the community, you hear me stressing that all the time as well. We are very fortunate. We have a wonderful water quality team. We have our own water quality lab, one of the few agencies that have our own water quality lab. We are a full-service utility, full-service city, and that's key also in terms of resilience. We have our treatment plants, and a key point of water quality is to be able to trust the water. we are fully transparent, and we keep that as a mantra as well, is to be as transparent as possible so you know your water quality, and that's all available here. And we kept that mantra throughout the crisis as well. So overall, I just want to say it's a pleasure to serve this community, and we get to serve this community as a collective. I kind of started that at the beginning of my speech, as a collective. Not just water, but water and power, which was also key during this crisis. And with the city, a full-service city, in partnership with fire, in partnership with police, and our own public health department, et cetera, and as a region and beyond. So that's a quick introduction of Pasadena Water and Power. I hope that wasn't too much. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Stacie. Okay, next, it's my pleasure to introduce Andy Whelton, who is Professor of Civil and Construction Engineering, and as well as Environmental and Ecological Engineering at Purdue University. Dr. Whelton and his team investigate and solve problems that affect our natural and built environment. His expertise focuses on environmental chemistry and engineering, disasters, polymer science and engineering, water quality, infrastructure, and public health. He leads Purdue University's Center for Plumbing Safety and co-developed the online Building Water Safety short course for health professionals. Professor Whelton earned his PhD, Master's of Science, and a Bachelor's of Science degree at Virginia Tech, but he's also worked for the U.S. Army and the National Institute for Standards and Technology, as well as in the private sector. So Andy, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks so much. So I'm here because there's a lot of great people in the audience, in the community, that really want the community to be stronger after this fire. And I just want to say thank you for the invitation for everybody and everybody who's out there or listening in. My background really started with frustration with regards to making decisions without really having any data years ago, 20 years ago. And that's kind of what led me to the PhD and what led me to trying to help communities, utilities, agencies, households, and businesses understand how to respond to and recover from a disaster to kind of inform that decision. If we could show, oh, perfect. Nope, that's great. In January, I was asked by the R.S. Kane Foundation to come out and talk with them about how they could better help their community respond to and recover from these fires. And so it was pretty recent after the fires, and we had talked about the types of issues that they're going to have with water, the types of issues they're going to have with stormwater, ocean water, pools, debris, soil, indoor air, and such. And generally, all this experience has been collected really over the years responding to disasters. And so I was involved in the campfire response, trying to get California stood up and understanding how to respond to and recover from those events. Partnered with water utilities who were dealing with hazardous waste level contamination in their water systems and trying to figure out how to get it out. We've collaborated with counties, Boulder County, Colorado, and responded to the Marshall Fire. In Lahaina, we were called in by Maui County, and then a bunch of different chemical disasters, East Palestine, Ohio, and such. And so our expertise basically is, okay, this happened, what do we need to know? Where do we need to test? How do we figure out what to test for? And how do we get people back safely? And so that's really what we've driven to. And I'm very excited to be here today because a lot of the reason why Pasadena Water and Power has gotten to where they are is because they followed the science that was built in the last 7 years by a whole bunch of different people, and they have amazing people that helped stand up the utility to make sure that the firefighters could fight the fires that they could and the power get back as soon as possible. And so we're here today here at Caltech, where we give the utmost credence to science and fundamental understanding. And I'm very proud to be here with you and to be sharing the stage with these individuals. If we could just show the next slide. We have 2 studies ongoing right now. One is a household survey for people that have been impacted by the fire, either outside the fire perimeter or inside the fire perimeter. And if you know somebody that has been affected or might want to participate, they're welcome to participate. It's anonymous. We're looking for needs and experiences and insurance experiences as well. in this survey. And so what we plan to do is in the next month or so start rolling out some of the results, but it closes at the end of May. And so you'll be hearing from us soon, but we're looking for a last push here. Also, we're reviewing home environmental testing reports. So if you or somebody you know has been infected by the fires and they had somebody do testing at their house or their apartment, we're actually reviewing those reports for free through this study, and they can submit them confidentially. We're not going to map them. We're not going to do anything with personal information, but we are reaching out to people when we find issues. Like, so if the contractor's using the wrong lead standard, we're calling people up about that. When the contractors are maybe not using the right method, we're calling people up about that, and so that they can then go back to their contractors and address those issues so they can understand their property safety. So those are two studies that are ongoing now, and I'm happy to talk about anything else, but I'm just really elated to be here with you all, to be at Caltech, where we recognize the importance of evidence-based decision-making, and here we are, so thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Andy. And then last but not least, Hannah Druckenmiller, who many know well, is Assistant Professor of Economics and also a William Hurt Scholar here at Caltech. Dr. Druckenmiller is also a Faculty Research Fellow at the National Bureau of Economic Research. She's a University Fellow at Resources for the Future, and also affiliate, of course, of Caltech's LCSSP. Her research aims to provide empirically based estimates for the environmental benefits and economic costs associated with natural resource protection, including flood mitigation, value of natural land, and developing new approaches for accounting for ecosystem services in climate policy. She received her PhD in agriculture and research economics in 2021 from UC Berkeley. Thanks for being here, Hannah.
Thanks, Andy, and it's so exciting to be here with Andy and Stacie speaking to all of you today. So I'm an economist, and I primarily think about land use regulation, where we should conserve lands and where we should develop them. But I'm increasingly interested in how we can design policies to increase resilience to natural disasters and to promote climate adaptation. And although a lot of my historical work has been on flooding and how to mitigate flood risk and adapt to floods, like many of the faculty here at Caltech, I'm becoming increasingly interested in building resilience to fires. And so I'm just really excited to be here and to learn with all of you today.
Great, thank you so much. Did you want to talk to the slide?
I just put up this slide to, you know, it's easy to think that one experience is everyone's experience, but the way that water is set up and managed in LA is very diverse. So we have lots of different districts, and they're all interconnected. And so I just wanted to point out, to kind of set the stage for the discussion, that there's lots of different suppliers here that face different constraints and different risks, and to just keep that in mind as we move through the conversation.
Excellent, thanks so much, Hannah. Okay, so I'm going to put the slide back up for the Slido again, so if you have questions as we go along. We're now going to transition into the part of the panel discussion where we're going to address a number of different topics. And we're going to start, I think, probably the one that people are most interested in. We're going to talk about the impacts on the water system and quality of water that happened actually during the Eaton fire. And so I want to start with you, Stacie. And I was wondering if you could describe a little bit what happened during the Eaton fire event from the utility perspective, and really what were the biggest challenges for PWP in the immediate response to the Eaton fire.
Got it. Overall, this devastating Eaton fire ravished Pasadena, Altadena communities, truly an unprecedented emergency event. So what we did as utility was first prepare. So I'll walk you through kind of a story from our perspective of how the event unfolded. And that at that time was more about the wind event. If you recall on the news, et cetera, there was extreme wind conditions. And that's actually what fueled the fire as well. But extreme wind conditions labeled particularly dangerous situation. I've never even heard that before. But that was the wind conditions there. So frankly, we were ready to go days before the fire even happened. And that was key. We had our crews staged, equipment ready, and our reservoirs pre-filled for any kind of emergency. Our city EOC was activated. In fact, it was during one of our EOC meetings in the evening that the fire chief said, hey, we just got a report about a potential fire. And so that was there. So we were ready to go for any kind of emergency event. Of course, no one can predict the scale and the devastation of this fire. Then I get a call soon after that. One of my section supervisors says, hey, I can see the fire from my backyard. His first reaction was to respond and go back to work to then go and protect critical water systems. That's a tremendous example of service over self, and that's what you have with your PWP team. Folks working for the community even as their own homes were in danger. And so that was incredible. And then, they went out there in the face of the fire with our other first responders, fire and police, et cetera, and try to help protect or save as much critical infrastructure as we could, whatever we couldn't remove to help mitigate any damages. And I remember this fire was so erratic and spread so fast. I remember saying, hey, on this area, guys, if you already have the police escorts, et cetera, try to hit these facilities as well on the east. And I remember them saying, boss, this is pretty far inland. I don't think it's going to get there. But sure enough, that fire spread so quickly. And in no time, it was engulfed in flames as well. And so overall, we had great teams out there trying to protect. So when we talk about first responders, that's also your utility workers, water and power. And then soon after that, it became clear that the fire engulfed not just that area, but moved west and started engulfing even more area and potentially impacting even more facilities. So our first thought was about public safety. And with public safety in mind, not knowing what the fire is doing to our facilities, we out of abundance of caution, we issued a do not drink water notification. First time in our agency's history, and very, very new to this region. And it had to be a quick decision. And so you can thank Jack as well with all his expertise to try to help that. And frankly, this is before even knowing what ConOps was and the science behind it, because you don't really think about that. Not everybody researches that until you have to deal with it. And so going through there out of abundance caution for the areas served by the facilities that may have been impacted. And the next part was about communication, how to get the information out quickly and effectively without perfect knowledge, without perfect information. Just know that there's something that could be happening. It's out of abundance of caution. And the key challenge, talked about challenge, was about misinformation. Now, this impacted about a third of our service area at the time, which was essentially the evacuated area. But misinformation was spreading almost as fast as the wildfire, really flaming the fans of fear, saying there's no water that's safe to drink. And it doesn't matter where you are, and not just in Pasadena, in every area, right? And since we're one of the first agencies to have put on the do not drink water notification, we kind of got hit in the press pretty hard. But time showed that was proven to be the right decision, hard decision, but the right decision for public safety. So communication-wise, we got out there. Interesting fact is we lost connection to our servers because of the fire temporarily. But we had to get information out. A key thing for all of this, water quality especially, is to be transparent and to get as much information out as possible. So we had a static map that we put up on our website. And but once our server's gone, our team worked through the night with GIS and other tools to put up an interactive map of the impacted area. So people can type in their address and they can see exactly if they're in the impacted area or not. We also developed overnight an FAQs page. So you can see if you have any questions, you can go right there. And that's front and center, and you can understand. So you can also make informed decisions, like Andy mentioned as well. So communication was key, and communicating with the other agencies. If you recall, it wasn't just the Eaton fire, it was the Palisades fire and other fires throughout Southern California. So we all got to have the same consistent messaging, otherwise it is confusing throughout the region. And so luckily we have those relationships, and we partner with all of them to begin with to have that discussion, consistent messaging on the do not drink. And if you recall, some places did a boil water notice at first, and then that had to be changed, and et cetera. And the ConOps report came in maybe a couple of days after. And luckily we partnered with Metropolitan, who brought Andy on board and said, hey, this is a key thing was benzene. But we already were doing above and beyond at that point. So, and that was actually our mantra, go above and beyond, in terms of water quality testing, in terms of transparency. So we tested more than the constituents that were required. We tested more sites as well, and and that saved us in the end, because later on the Division of Drinking Water said you got to do more. So that actually helped out, and we're transparent. We show all our results on a website. So if you're in the community, you can see that. So if we say we're lifting the do not drink because it passed all the water quality tests, we're able to confirm it, you can see the data. It's out there. So I think that was key, and then working with our partners was key there all the way through too. And overall, I talked about the misinformation being a challenge, but another challenge was we're sprinting a marathon. So it was a lot of fatigue that could happen. If you're dealing with this situation, we have to work through a lot of things. But in the end, we know you can't move forward without safe water quality, as mentioned at the beginning of this talk, right? You can't live without safe water quality, safe drinking water. And by our crews, some in this room today, working around the clock, assessing our systems that were damaged once we had access to that, restoring our systems, doing all the water quality testing, and then some. We were able to lift our do not drink water notification within days. Now, not months, not years, as you're going to hear some other stories, but days. 5 days for majority of our system, about 15 days for the last few percent of our system as well. So that's key and that's critical. And this couldn't happen without the team that we have and without community support. It meant so much that we got a lot of community support there too, like thank yous, and also what can we do to help. And that was tremendous. And the only way we're going to get through this is together. So we appreciate that. I just want to say thank you.
Thanks, Stacie. Maybe just before we move on, maybe one quick follow-up question. You talked quite a bit about communication going out and talking to the public about what you were seeing. Was there any information that would have been very helpful in terms of what was coming in during the fire itself that would have been especially helpful in responding to the water quality issues?
Yeah, and we have that too. So we're very open. We have a lot of calls about, hey, even after we lift the do not drink, any questions, it's good to contact us and we can alleviate those concerns, or we can go check it out. So all of that too. I think some information coming in is our neighbor's house got burned down and the water structure is just flowing, so go out there and check it out and turn that off too. The Army Corps, when they did their sweep, the same thing as well. So we did that ourselves, but it's good to have a second check and all the way through. But the key thing was also communicating within the city, and the county, the fire departments, the police departments, health, and more, all the first responders.
Great. Thank you, Stacie. Andy, you have had quite a bit of experience working in different fire incidents. What did you find was unique about either the Eden Fire or across the different events that your team has worked at when we're thinking about water quality?
So looking back in the last 8 years or so, I would say what we saw happen in the Eden Fire area was not necessarily too unique, except I would say Pasadena Water and Power kind of found their way out of the woods faster than others because they were not as damaged as some others, where they didn't lose 50 or 80% of their service population, but they also had a plan, and they were communicating organically with the community and receiving stuff and responding to that. We have seen that like with Paradise, California, when they lost about 14,000 homes in the 172-mile water system was depressurized. They didn't know where to go, so what they did was, and they lost, basically all of its customers, so they had no revenue anymore. So they couldn't actually pay their employees shortly after the fire unless there was some type of influx of cash that could support them. So there's these larger systems that have catastrophic damage and they're challenged infrastructure-wise. In Paradise, 30 of 36 of their workers lost their homes. And so after that, you basically had everybody at the water utility leave because they had to take care of their families, right? So you have that. We didn't necessarily have that here, but we did have situations like with the types of infrastructure damage. You had some contamination some places, and then the smaller systems, generally bear the brunt more so than the larger systems. And we saw that in Colorado, and we've seen that in elsewhere. So it takes them longer to recover, primarily because they just don't have the staff or the revenue or reserves to pay for people to come in to do the work to get it back.
Great, thanks. Yeah, and we will definitely return to this topic of the process to recovery and how that is handled different by larger and smaller water agencies. So maybe last question down to Hannah. We've talked a little bit about communication and what happened during the event. I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about how the community, either immediately after the fire or in the following weeks, received information about water quality and how that helped people make decisions about going back to homes or just what their plans were going to be in the aftermath.
Sure. So I think the utilities did an amazing job of getting the information out there. And like Stacie said, there was a lot of coordination. And more even than that, there was efforts to get it out across multiple channels so that you would reach different segments of the population. So there was information on utility websites, city websites, county websites, but also on social media, hand-distributed flyers. They were really responsible at trying to reach the wide audience. I think where we might have run into a little bit of trouble is that then that information gets picked up by news outlets or by social media that's not communicating all of the pertinent information. And so when there were changes and warnings from a boil advisory to a do not drink to a do not use, all of the pertinent details which were available on the county websites and the utility websites didn't necessarily percolate through all of the channels that people were actually getting information from. I don't know, my hope for water quality information is that it becomes kind of like earthquakes in California, where we know we live in a high fire risk area. This becomes a part of the culture to know the different needs of preparedness and what all of these different warnings mean. But I think for people that weren't experienced with this type of disaster, one of the things that was really hard is that you grow up thinking that if water isn't potable, you boil it. And then when you get benzene in the water, heating water is the worst thing you can do because you can release it into the air. And so if we're able to come up with communication devices that people can understand when we're not in a crisis mode, so that they are better prepared when we are in crisis, that's my hope moving forward. But it's really hard. And I think the other thing that was super hard is that there was a great amount of effort to communicate where water was safe and where it wasn't. But when there's fear, even people that are in safe areas are scared to drink water. And that increases the pressure on resources like bottled water that's being handed out or that people are trying to purchase at stores. And so the imperative of not only communicating when water isn't safe to drink, but also when it really is, and the need to leave the resources for the people who need them most, who are affected, I think really came to light during the crisis.
Great, thanks, Hannah. And I think maybe just before we move on, I realize, Andy, we actually heard a nice talk from you earlier today in the Environmental Science and Engineering department. We heard all of the different ways that fire can impact water quality. But I don't know, Stacie or Andy, you want to talk a little bit about actually what were the biggest aspects that impacted water quality? Was it the pipes? Was it soil getting into groundwater, et cetera? What were the issues you were most concerned about?
For
Go right ahead.
okay. For our utility, first it was the unknown, right? The fire surrounded our facilities. We actually don't know what's happening there. So whether it be debris, whether it be ash, getting into our system. So that was the first concern, and that's why we went with a do not drink. We went straight there because it could be VOCs as well, right? So we didn't go to do not boil, we did do not drink. And then later on, as more information, and we also don't know what we don't know. So, I mean, one of the key things is we're part of the, what I said wasn't that important. As part of being the Metropolitan Water District, I get a lot of calls about how can we help, right? And a big part of that was, how you can help is actually to help with the research, because we're responding. So at the same time, what about the research needs? What are the key things? And they actually are the ones that help bring Andy on board and to help us know about the CONOPS and the benzene order and things of that nature, and talking to the Division of Drinking Water. So then it was more VOCs. Now, we didn't have as much concern with the VOCs because we use high-quality materials. We actually don't use PVC piping. We don't use plastics in our system. So it wasn't as big of a concern, but we wanted to make sure. Like I said, our mantra was above and beyond. So we made sure to test those things. So it was the benzene that could have been coming back from the burned houses that we're then most concerned about based on the body of science that was built there too, and which I'm hopefully can help build and help add to that body of science.
Andy, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, I would just say that right now, when fires happen, regardless if it's a tiny system or a large system, when a building burns down and you lose pressure in the water system, like maybe there's too much hydrogen demand or there's too many structures that are leaking, you can actually suck debris and contamination from this burning house into the pipe down through the water meter and then into the water main. And so this is kind of one of the ways that people can have contaminated water. When we talk about VOCs or SVOCs, that's like volatile organic compounds. So these are basically chemicals that like to be in the air. They like to jump out of the water, like benzene and some other things. And then there's semi-volatile organic compounds, and these are heavier. They don't really like to jump out of the water, so they generally stay dissolved in the water. So you can have this phenomena happen. You can have plastics burn or thermally decompose at about 150 degrees centigrade. Wildfires can reach like 1,000 degrees centigrade or over 1,000. And of course, the distance from the heat source would influence the temperature of that pipe. And then you can also have other systems issues where maybe hydrants are left open or storage tanks have vents. You have burning trees and other things can release benzene or VOCs, and that can be sucked in and then mixed with the water and dragged to the system. So those are like the three ways that water systems can get contaminated by this wildfire issue. And to all utilities' point, you could potentially have multiple situations occur in the same water system area. It's not just like one or the other. And we don't have the science now to tell you why it occurred here and why it didn't occur here. And so that's where we need to go from a scientific perspective, and that's what Stacie's alluding to, is like the lessons that are learned here from Pasadena, but also from the small utilities in the Palisades. We need to build on that so that the next community that faces what this community faced can get back faster and maybe defend certain infrastructure in a way that lessens the chance that it happens.
Great. Thanks very much, Andy. Okay, so at this point, I think we're going to transition a little bit to talking about the recovery period and continue to encourage people to ask questions on the Slido, or if you just want to raise your hand, we're happy to take questions as we go along as well. So Andy, again, with your experience working with different communities after these events, in terms of both the sort of short-term and the long-term recovery, what are going to be some of the most challenging aspects for communities to think about getting back into these burn areas and how we address questions of water quality?
So we have a study that's wrapping up now, which basically shows that even with Paradise's situation and some of these other mega fires, that the water system actually isn't the hindrance to rebuilding. It actually, a lot of it is debris removal. 6 to 9 months generally is the debris removal duration window, and as water systems get repaired, they actually just disconnect the infrastructure from themselves so that they can fix themselves. So that, I think, is really what the issue is generally, and so, looking ahead, recovery is, when am I going to be able to get back to my property safely? When's my water going to be safe? And I think what this incident and all the others now have shown us is like, we got this. Like the water, we got this now. We know how to deal with this. There might be some situations where we need to navigate some issues, but there's a responsive community from a utility standpoint. It's not just Pasadena. It's a bunch of different places. And now there's enough evidence where there's peer pressure, right? So there's, if you have a fire in a certain area that doesn't necessarily think there might be an issue, there is peer pressure to say, look, we need to take a forward-leaning approach to this. We need to test, and then we can lift the order. So I think that's where we are from a water perspective, but from a rebuilding recovery perspective, debris removal seems to be the longest issue, and there's ways to optimize that looking forward.
Right. So, and we've heard from some of the previous webinars we've had that this period of debris removal will result in resuspension of dust, et cetera, and there are some real concerns there for soil quality and air quality. Do any of those concerns sort of propagate through to thinking about water quality as well? It could be a question for, I guess, anyone on the panel here.
Experts.
I don't think anybody's looked at that yet, but the nice thing about water quality once it passes the treatment facility is that it's contained. We generally don't have open drinking water reservoir, like potable waters that you could just drink out of and slurp out of. We contain them, we protect infrastructure from it. The dust and debris wouldn't necessarily get into a storage tank. Like, let's say there's a whole bunch of debris removal operations next to a storage tank. It would just, there's no vacuum, so it's not sucking anything in. So the water, even in those situations, would be unaffected.
Great. Yeah, go ahead.
If I
Stacie.
can add to that also, we're diligent in our water quality monitoring. And like I said, we have our own water quality lab, so we can turn those results around very quickly. And so with the above and beyond mantra, we continue to test diligently our entire system.
Great, thanks. Stacie, since we're sort of on this topic then, maybe I can ask you to talk a little bit about PWP's path to recovery, what happened over, those first few days. But I think it'd also be interesting to hear, Altadena has this diversity of water agencies and what some of the challenges are for large water agencies versus smaller water agencies.
Okay. I'd say we're on an expedited path to recovery, and that's a very positive thing. One, we invested in a resilient system to begin with. Luckily we have the forethought and the vision from my predecessors, really, and we continue to do that. On the type of materials we use, I mentioned we don't use plastic, we use copper for our service lines, et cetera, our mains as well. And we keep that updated. So I think those are key things there. We have our own construction operations and maintenance crews, along with our own water quality lab. So I think that helps us expedite our recovery effort. Also, we continue to sprint this marathon. We do have damaged reservoirs. The road to recovery is partnership. We have it was a great story. Our neighboring agency, if from your map, the one right next to us on the northeast, Kinaloa Irrigation District, we have multiple emergency interconnections, and that's a key thing too. Emergency interconnections, that connection with other water agencies is key. And during the fire, the emergency interconnection helped them save their area. They got water from us. By the way, we were very fortunate. We never had, we weren't out of water during the fires. None of our hydrants ran dry. Then after the fire, one of our reservoirs was damaged. It's out of service. But in order to continue delivering water, we could isolate that and use an emergency interconnection with Kinaloa. So we're actually balancing their system and our system, and we're integrated that. And so that's a really good news story. So that's a road to recovery. And not only is that teaching us what we can do this time around, it also helps us about the next time around, what we can do together. And we are upgrading all of our emergency interconnections, frankly, from this event. And like I said, we have our own crews, so we've already changed out all the damaged meters, hundreds and hundreds of meters already done. And we are very close to both our city and county planning. We have weekly meetings about the rebuild. Although debris removal might be the biggest time critical path, we don't want to be part of that critical path or stopping folks from rebuilding. And so we're being very proactive about that to make sure that we can meet all the fire codes when they rebuild, including all the new sprinkler systems, et cetera, that they're going to need when they rebuild their homes. And so we are definitely on that path to recovery there. When you talk about size of an agency, I think of us kind of like that Goldilocks story, like not too small, not too big, we're just right, So we, we don't, we have resources, we have our own teams, but we're also nimble. You can hear differences with larger agencies that you heard in the Palisades fire, and smaller agencies there too. But again, the path is to work together on that. So we're here for each other. We have some folks from Foothill, et cetera, and their agencies that got greatly damaged, and we're here to help all together, all the way through. And we're all part of the Metropolitan Water District, so we're all connected to that big regional water family as well.
Great. Thanks, Stacie. Maybe just one last question for the panel, and then I'm going to take a few questions that have come in from the Slido. So we do want to touch a little bit on aspects of policy. So Hannah, could you talk a little bit about, what aspects of water policy impact both how communities prepare for wildfire and how that might also influence the recovery period?
Yes, of course, there's many policies that matter here. I think one of the ones that's top of mind for me is how you finance recovery efforts, which might be more important for smaller water districts than for larger ones, and how you set up risk sharing among districts in order to help people rebound faster. So the interconnections is a great example of how even if you have separate districts, you can set up kind of sharing that spreads risk across those. The financing, I think, is also a really interesting piece. Connecting people to financing that not only helps them rebuild quickly, but also helps them rebuild better. So building in financial incentives in order to build resilient systems that take the pressure off just rebuilding quickly and actually put more pressure on kind of rebuilding, right? Systems that you can isolate, systems that use high quality materials that are less vulnerable to risk. And so I think that's one area where, the state has worked a lot, and there's a lot more to be done to improve those financing structures. Kind of in the same vein as access to insurance, we think a lot about access to property insurance for individual homeowners, but businesses and utilities also need insurance to help them rebound from disasters as well, and so making sure that that type of access is available. I mean, I study land use, so I'm particularly interested in how we can change, maybe not water policy, but even zoning where we build in order to take pressure off water systems that face high risk, and how to zone infrastructure so that it's protected. So if we think about building kind of protective buffers around individual houses, you can think about doing the same thing for water infrastructure or for other types of critical infrastructure. So those are some of the things I've been thinking about, but there's almost too much to mention here, and so I'll let Andy and Stacie chime in if there's ones top of mind for them.
Anything to add in terms of thinking about policy moving forward and insurance for PWP, et cetera?
Yeah, there's a lot.
We found a tough one.
There's a lot of different types of policy that you can think of. Finance is a big one, all the way through. Also, you start thinking about other things as reliability. We're fortunate, but I know other agencies have been in multiple lawsuits, et cetera, et cetera. So there's some policy behind that as well. And then just overall thinking about how we can help one another more. So some mutual aid policies that could be helpful. And in those states looking at multiple types of legislation, some actually harmful. So in the thought that they're trying to be helpful, I understand that, and trying to be helpful, but without that understanding can actually, we were just talking about that right before this panel, so we have to be mindful about smart legislation that can help with policy moving forward. I want me to answer now?
If you're welcome, you're welcome.
Okay, so there's a couple things going on. One being for Pasadena Water and Power agencies, or customers. We recognize that if your home was burnt or destroyed, and your pipe's broken and leaking, that you don't want to come back to a big water bill. So what we employed as far as policy is leak forgiveness. So up to $5,000 off your water bill if you're in that situation. So you're not hit with a large water bill if you come home to the destroyed home. So that's one policy that we did as well. And then for the water bill itself and reliability and cost in the future, it is prudent to invest now versus pay more later. And that's what we found with our resilient infrastructure. We invested in high quality materials now, which allowed us to return water service on faster in order to avoid many, many, many times more the cost with an emergency and post-emergency. So I think altogether it helps us keep our cost competitive and affordable.